I'm John from Great Lakes Country, and today we're making Dutch Oven Lasagna. Scratch-made Italian sausage with tangy marinara sauce, layered with noodles and 3 different cheeses, all baked with hardwood coals to become the most incredible Dutch oven lasagna ever cooked in the great outdoors. We're out here in the beautiful woods of northern Michigan with another outdoor cast iron cooking video. Tonight, we've got Italian on the menu with an amazing 18-layer Dutch oven lasagna. That's right, Dutch oven lasagna. If it can be cooked in an oven at home, it can be cooked in a Dutch oven with coals right from the campfire. That's exactly what we're doing here today, so let's get right into it and start putting together the components of our campfire lasagna. All right, and our lasagna today is going to be an Italian sausage lasagna, and of course, we're going to make that from scratch too. And I was thinking, I've got all this venison, so I'm gonna make a venison Italian sausage, or rather half venison, half pork. All I really need to do is get this meat into a bowl. I'm gonna use ½ pound of each, pork and venison. And now all I have to do is add some seasonings to it, starting with some kosher salt, whole fennel seeds, paprika, basil, black pepper, crushed red pepper, garlic powder, onion powder, and a little white sugar. And just to help hydrate everything, about 1/4 cup of ice cold water. And as always, all the ratios and ingredients and everything will be in a link in the video description below. Now I just gotta start getting in here like any sausage making and mash it all up, get it all mixed together until everything's well incorporated and it's not completely sopping wet anymore. And since this isn't going to be getting cased or turned into links or anything like that, I'm not going to be as focused on a completely thorough mixing like I might otherwise. We're just trying to get everything incorporated. Now I'm just going to stick this bowl of Italian sausage into the ice box for a little while, let it start to rehydrate all those dried herbs and things, and I'll just leave it there until we're ready to move on and start cooking it up and making our lasagna. Okay, and of course the next step is to just cook off all of that sausage we just made. And because it is kind of lean from that venison, I'm gonna start with a little bit of olive oil. I can see I'm on very uneven ground, but that's not gonna stop us. And in goes the sausage. And we're just gonna let that cook away for a few minutes until it's all nicely browned. I'll do my best to break it up with a wooden spoon as we go. Get it all nicely cooked and ready to put into our lasagna. Okay, that's looking browned up and beautiful, so I'm just going to put a lid on this pot and keep it right here where it is until we're ready to start spooning it into our lasagna. All right, so now we gotta whip up our ricotta cheese mixture, which will of course be another one of the layers in the lasagna. So we're going with an entire 15-ounce container of full-fat ricotta cheese. Do they call it full fat? I've always called it that. And into that, we're gonna mix 1 egg, about a teaspoon of black pepper, which I think that looks about right, a tablespoon of Italian seasoning, which, I don't know, let's call about that much. And we need about 1/4 cup of flat leaf Italian parsley, which, I don't know, it's probably about that much, just chopped up pretty fine. I'm not gonna get too particular about it. I will do my best to make a huge mess, as always. Yeah, that seems about right. And just get to whisking all that in together. I'm not actually sure that the whisk was the right move here because now I've just got a lollipop inside of my whisk of ricotta cheese. We're gonna make it work. And there we have our ricotta cheese mixture. And I think that we're just about finally ready to line up our components and start building this lasagna. We've got our Italian sausage, we've got our ricotta mixture, lots of shredded mozzarella and Parmesan, and of course, some of my beautiful homemade sauce that I previously canned. And for our noodles, we're gonna be using these oven-ready, no-boil, Barilla brand lasagna noodles because that's really the kind of noodle you need for a Dutch oven lasagna like this. Today we're gonna be using my 10-inch Coleman Dutch oven. And I know what you're thinking, you're not really supposed to put something as acidic as tomato sauce in cast iron. Well, that's why we've got one of these handy foil Dutch oven liners. And this isn't exactly the right size for this Dutch oven, but a little modification and it fits right in there. All right, let's start building these layers. First, a little olive oil on the bottom just to kind of make sure nothing's gonna scorch or stick or burn onto the bottom. We shouldn't really have to worry about that dough because of the heat management and the coals that we're gonna be using, but never hurts. Then we're gonna go down with, I don't know, about a half a cup of our sauce. Spread out along the bottom here. Now a layer of these noodles, and we got to try to figure out how to put a rectangular peg into a round hole. So all we're gonna do is break them and fit them in any which way we can to kind of cover the whole surface. And if they're overlapping a little bit, that's fine. This thing's gonna come together just fine. No need to get too exact, but something like that is looking okay to me. Now we're going down with about half of our ricotta mixture, and I'll just try my best to carefully spread that across these noodles without moving those noodles around too much. Now for about half of that cooked Italian sausage, just sprinkle it over top any which way. That's already smelling real good. Okay, now for another layer of those super brittle and sort of tricky to work with lasagna noodles. Okay, and whenever we put down some noodles, we need to put down some more sauce because these things need to completely hydrate from the sauce while they're cooking. If they don't get enough sauce, they're not gonna have enough liquid contact to fully soften them, and you're gonna have crunchy lasagna. And that's not something I'm really interested in. Okay, and at this time, I am gonna give it just a little hit of garlic salt for just a little extra flavor, something about like that. Now we're gonna go down with about a half cup or so of this shredded mozzarella and parm blend, give or take. Now another layer of the noodles, and I find myself getting less and less particular about how these are arranged with each passing layer. Okay, now for the other half of the ricotta mixture. And it never seems like I have quite enough of this stuff, but when it all comes together, it's really pretty sufficient. All right, now for the rest of the sausage. And another layer of noodles. Yes, there are a lot of noodle layers, but we're trying to make ourselves a huge lasagna here. I'm gonna go through all this trouble and make something that's only about an inch thick. That just seems ridiculous. Now, you guessed it, more sauce. One more hit of the garlic salt. Now for another half cup of the mozzarella blend, give or take, and I'm reaching the top of my foil liner, but luckily we're almost there. One more layer of noodles. Now for the remaining pasta sauce. And I think we're gonna have just enough. Now the rest of the mozzarella blend. And yes, there's an extra big layer that goes on top because we want that super cheesy, melty top, just like any good lasagna should have. But just to make extra sure that we've got our cheese quota met, we're gonna go on with another layer of very finely shredded, fresh Parmesan cheese. How much, you ask? I don't know, just however much seems about right to you. To me, I guess that seems almost about right. And I'm not gonna promise that I'm not gonna add a little bit more after this thing's done baking. Okay, now after what seems like forever, we're finally ready to start putting some heat on this thing. So on goes the lid, and we're moving over by the fire pit, and we're gonna start cooking. All right, so we're gonna be using a relatively tall Dutch oven stand, also known as a trivet. And now we need to load up with coals. And for the heat on this lasagna, we're gonna go pretty even heat on top and on bottom because it's a pretty wet recipe and it's a pretty tall Dutch oven stand. That being said, we don't wanna totally fry the bottom of it, so I'm gonna go mostly around the edges. I'm not too worried about overcooking it at the top. In fact, the main objective here is to soften those no-boil noodles and just get all that cheese melted. Heat everything through so it's delicious. And we're gonna let this go. I think it's probably gonna be about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, something in that neighborhood. And about every 15 minutes, I'll go ahead and give the whole Dutch oven a turn, as well as the lid, about halfway around, just to make sure there's no uneven spots. And if there are, we're kind of evenly distributing that heat as we go. So we'll check back in a little bit, see how we're doing. All right, I think we've been going about half an hour, so I'm gonna take a little peek and see how we're looking. That is definitely some melty cheese. I'm gonna stick the thermometer probe in there, not so much to take the temperature, but to see how tender those noodles feel. And they're definitely softer than where we started, but I'm feeling a little resistance. So this thing's definitely gonna need a little bit more time before we're ready to eat. Okay, this thing ended up being on the coals for more like an hour, but the noodles are al dente and the top is looking cheesy and melty and amazing. So I think it's time to finally dig in and have a slice. And of course the tricky part is always getting it out of this thing without tearing it all apart. But we're just gonna do our best. Oh yeah. And now at long last, I'm finally ready to dig in and have a taste. Absolutely delicious. As good as if it was made at home in the oven. Arguably better. You guys want to get in here and have a bite?
Yeah. Yes. I want the top. Annihilate this.
Please.
Oh yeah.
I think I mostly got cheese on that one.
It's okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
Thoughts, feedback, comments, criticisms?
Eating.
No criticisms? Excellent.
Can't talk. Lasagna.
These two have been helping me for the last many hours in the production of this video, which has been very, very useful and helpful. Well, we have a whole lot more of this lasagna we need to kill before the night is over. So I think we're gonna dig into that, cut up some more slices. Again, if you wanna see the entire recipe for what I made here, I'll put a link in the video description below for everything. As always, be sure to like and subscribe and stay up to date with all our latest stuff, including future outdoor and cast iron cooking videos. And consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/GreatLakesCountry. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'm John, and this is Steve, and this is Kim. And this is Great Lakes Country. Layered with noodles and 4 different cheeses. 4? Layered with noodles and 3 different cheeses. I'm gonna have to cut that part out about how you always put sauce on noodles, because I've got a layer that doesn't call for that.
It's a mukbang.
I don't like that word. I do not like that word.